Greetings, all. Today we have a special impromptu live stream with myself, Ryan Roger Athe, and Stone Loki to kind of chat and remember Queen Elizabeth II, who, for those who don't know and live under a rock, has basically been the reigning monarch of my country and many other in the Commonwealth since, well, before I was born. And kind of chat and remember a woman who dedicated most of her life to servitude. Never had a day off. I sit here and I look on social media and I just shake my damn head at some of the comments and some of the. It's like, okay, but today we're just gonna talk about Queen Elizabeth. May she rest in peace. It's a well-deserved rest. And also maybe touch on some of the changes that are going to come now that we have Charles III. I kind of hoped he'd get interesting and change his name.
He probably will. He probably will.
It's official. He's Charles III.
Really?
He could have been King Arthur. He could have been King Arthur.
He could have been King Arthur. It is his middle name. There were also rumors beforehand that he'd go King George after his grandfather. But he has chosen Charles III. So it is King Charles.
3 times a charm.
Yeah, hopefully. I doubt it, but I think everybody's just now waiting for William. But that aside. So Queen Elizabeth passed yesterday, and for a lot of people, it's going to be interesting because I don't think a lot of people really understand what that means across the Commonwealths. There's a lot of things that we say now that are going to have to be changed, like our money will all change. Now, because of course King Charles is on the throne. The other thing too that a lot of people don't understand is the institutions that are around will all have to change. Like, for instance, here in Canada, we have the Queen's Bench. Well, now it will be the King's Bench. So, and a lot of people too were shocked at how fast it went from Queen Elizabeth to King Charles.
Yeah.
And anybody that knows their history realizes that the second, yes, there is the fancy coronation, but the reigning monarch never really, there really isn't a point where there isn't a reigning monarch. The second that Elizabeth's heart stopped beating, Charles became king.
Yes.
But Elizabeth herself, you look back and she did a lot of things. Like, this woman was not a woman to mess with. World War II. She was a mechanic in World War II. They would practice shooting in in the castle. And the amount of history that this woman has lived through is astounding. World War II, the Cold War, all the rebellions, all the stuff that she has had to preside over.
The end of empire. Consider Britain in 1952 and compare it to Britain in 2022. There have been massive changes, some for the better and some for the worse.
Yes.
Yeah, and don't forget that about 40 years ago, she was on her horse, and someone fired 6 shots at her at close range. They were blanks, but this was like right up at her, and completely kept control of her horse. Didn't freak out. This is like what Canuck said. This is a woman of composure.
Yes. And one of the things that I always loved about Elizabeth, her mother had the same ability, and I was talking to Ryan earlier about it. I loved how Elizabeth could tell somebody off with the most politest way. Like, just in the most politest way, she could tell somebody off. And it was just so amazing how she could make somebody look so small without saying one negative thing. It's just so she just commanded a room. When Elizabeth walked in, she commanded the room. And not just because she was the queen, but just her ability to reign in a room.
That
Was amazing.
reputation, that persona that she lived by, not only as a monarch, but as a princess, her entire life was a dedication to duty, especially because when she was younger, the House of Windsor was in a difficult time. Her father was not supposed to be king, only became king because her father's brother eloped with an American divorcee and basically did what he wished, kind of like with Harry and Meghan.
Yes. Well, and I mean, you could draw the parallel. I mean, look at how much the royal family has changed now. Charles is on the throne, and his wife is still considered queen. Back in the day, that wouldn't have flown. It didn't fly, which is why we had the abdication of the throne in the first place.
Yeah. You don't marry a divorcee under any circumstances.
Yeah. So, the royal family itself has evolved throughout the years. But when people speak of Elizabeth, they should put a lot of respect on her name, just on the simple fact. Think about this. She died yesterday. 2 days before she dies, she's welcoming and greeting her new prime minister.
And saying goodbye. And saying goodbye to the old one.
Yeah. In an official capacity. 2 days before she dies, she's still performing her duty. You gotta know she didn't feel well that day.
You'd think people in their 70s would, lay back their duties and fade into the back. But she kept on going throughout the decades, and only up until her husband passed away did she step back a little more. But she was still there at that age. I would not expect that of ordinary people at that age to do that. Take something special to be able to have that dedication to duty from her 20s and 30s all the way up to her 90s. And I think she would have continued to do that if she were alive today.
Yeah, I think, it's funny because in a way, I think we missed an opportunity. I would have loved I always wanted Elizabeth to make it to 100. Just to see if she wrote herself a letter. And Ryan will know what I mean by that, and nobody else will.
The sovereign always writes a letter to someone who reaches their 100th birthday. It's sort of a tradition because it was such a rarity. And back in the past, if you reached that milestone, you were considered to be a much more moral person, because immoral people, according to religious values, are expected to die earlier.
Yes. So Elizabeth, the other thing I always wanted to know, and I don't think it was ever asked of Queen Elizabeth, is if she ever wrote her mother a letter, or did she just phone her and say happy birthday, right? Like, can you imagine that letter? Hi, Mom. But her Majesty did her job, and I can't stress this enough. She never had a day off from the time she ascended the throne to the time she was till the day she died.
Going to official engagements, meeting with prime ministers, attending the Privy Council, meeting foreign heads of state and sometimes heads of government in their capacity as head of state, meeting the people, which typically monarchs did not do traditionally. And it never really stopped. It went from one official engagement to another. That's the duty that is expected of a monarch, to be the best of the nation, to be a great moral leader of the people, and leave politics to those beneath the royal family.
Yes.
So that they'd be above reproach, especially during a time of national crisis like a war or a pandemic, to bring the people together. And we don't have that anymore. And I don't think we will ever have that. That's why I believe the days of the United Kingdom are numbered, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, and in this moment, I'd like to say that, whether you like Charles or you don't like Charles, and that can be an interesting conversation for another day. But the poor guy, he just lost his mother yesterday.
Yeah.
He's already on a plane in London, having to give speeches. Now, as a person who's lost his mother, I can tell you that the day after, the week after, the month after, you're not in any shape to put on that smile and go out and speak. He has to be.
I mean, he's been preparing for this moment for decades since he was a teenager. So it is expected of him. There's no one more experienced to have this position. However, he has a much less well-received reputation because of his efforts to influence the ministers of state, which is something a monarch should not do.
Yes, and Elizabeth did a really good job of. Elizabeth herself had very little power, but great influence. Throughout the years, Elizabeth has when she has weighed in on something, it's been well, I guess I better get to it. It's funny because people don't realize they're very quick to judge the crown when they want to find fault with it. And I think Elizabeth gets a lot of flack for things she had no control over. Elizabeth was the queen, yes. Elizabeth had the crown. Elizabeth had the throne. But if you think for one cotton picking second that the queen had any chance of going, yeah, no, we're not doing that, it's kind of out of her hands. Yes, there's the formal, sign off, and she'd get her little red box every day, just as Charles will now. He probably got his first one this morning, which has all the affairs of the realms in this nice little box that they have to read every day and go through and people who have been close to the queen have stated that they were amazed at how much she took that serious and how, even when she wasn't feeling well, that red box better be on her desk or, somebody's head will roll.
You'd expect most monarchs, especially, say you're a 20-something year old and you're just ascending to the throne. I don't think you would be prepared under today's conditions to go through the heavy workload, the advisement that you have to give to your prime minister, especially during difficult circumstances. And especially if he or she is not very competent. Most politicians are not competent. Your role as a monarch is to be the foundation of not only your nation's reputation, but to have that confidence in a time of crisis. Now, we've spoken about how much this passing monarch has had such a stellar reputation. Of course, nobody is perfect, but what she represented is what people are really mourning. Her ability to command the confidence of this nation, I don't think will ever be surpassed. Though, when she does go on, or did go on foreign engagements, she was most popular, as Robert told us backstage, with the Yankees.
Yes.
Such as Stone Loki here.
That is absolutely true. And there's like a difference, you brought up this difference between her and Charles. And I'm not down on anybody here, but growing up in the 80s, for me, this was like human soap opera. I would hear about all this stuff, and my mom would get these magazines, and they weren't even like trash tabloids, but who is Prince Charles sleeping with now? Who is the man behind the, who is sleeping around at Buckingham Palace? Who is Diana cheating on Charles? And it was just like, I mean, that was like, she would talk about this stuff like she lived there. She would talk about these things, and it's just it's a completely different, it's a huge generational gap, because everyone loved Elizabeth. Everyone loved Elizabeth. She was strong. She stood up for her country. She worked for her country. It's not just like, people that are like, oh, I wish I lived in Buckingham Palace, or I wish I was. It's not like the little wave that people do, the little sideways hand wave. That's not her job, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
She works. Her life is the crown.
Yeah.
She doesn't get to decide, well, you know what? I want to go out at 1 a.m. and I want a hamburger. I mean, I'm sure she could probably get somebody to do that for her, but she can't just jump in a car and do it and be on her own. There is no on your own. This woman and anybody can say, oh my God, to have a life like that. You have no idea. They have their own problems. We have our problems. They have their problems. And
Elizabeth's sister Margaret tried to live that kind of life, and she paid the price for it, being shunned sometimes by her family and being treated as this celebrity in the United Kingdom. Ultimately, she had to move, I believe, to the Caribbean to get some peace, because she tried to live a lavish life as a royal, and it didn't work out well for her.
Yeah.
You can try, but it won't be good.
One of my, the Queen and her mother were always great together. Just the stories alone of those two are insane. The Queen mom was funny. There was a story that came out after she passed, of her detail being so annoyed with the Queen mom because randomly she would tell them to stop at pubs because she wanted to go play pool. like just randomly. Yeah, I'm going to play pool now. And the Secret Service going, what the but you look at Queen Elizabeth as the monarch, and she was able to do it eloquently.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked so effortless when she was and she always had an answer for everything. There was this one time I remember her just walking, and it was right near Christmas time, and she was walking amongst the crowd, and this little kid came up to her and says, "Do you believe in Father Christmas?" And she, like, within an instant, "I'd like to believe in him," and she kept walking without even blinking an eye. And she was so good at just being royal, but at the same time being like everybody else. She had that grandmother. I've heard it said she was the world's grandmother, and in a lot of ways it's true. Bush Jr. would say so, because of this is my favorite little tidbit about Bush Jr. So Bush Jr. is having a press conference with the Queen standing beside him, and what the man was supposed to say was that it was the first time that Queen Elizabeth had been back in the United States since 1976. What the man did say was it was the first time that Queen Elizabeth had been back in the United States since 1776. And if you find the video, because it is online of this interview, the look that Queen Elizabeth shoots him when he says that is priceless.
I'm not that old. I'm not that. Yeah, I can imagine. She's like, I'm not that old. Crazy
me,
American.
Yeah.
How did you get elected? Yeah. How did you get elected, good sir? Oh, I robbed it from Al Gore in Florida.
No, it's by God, boy. They just brought the votes in, and I said, yeah, I'll do the job. I tell you what, Queenie, you see this Queenie right here? She hadn't been back to the U.S. since 1776. God, how old that make you, Queenie? Oh, Lordy. Yeah.
It was funny because in an interview afterwards, he was asked about it. And all he said was, she shot me a look that only a grandmother could give. And I knew I had messed up. She didn't say anything. She just shot him a look like, really?
Hell, in his acceptance speech, he was like, "Hey y'all, they call me GW. How y'all doing out there tonight? We're going to drink some beer and we're going to have some fun tonight because apparently I won something. I don't know what the hell I won, but we're having a party."
And Dick Cheney was
the only man
behind him.
I think in existence that could make two oil companies go bankrupt. But there's that. But Queen Elizabeth II, I think, will go down as one of the most influential monarchs of the 20th century.
Great Britain's greatest monarch, as I put it.
Yes.
And we're going to miss her because once the House of Windsor starts interfering in politics, which I believe Charles III will do, if he lives as long as his mother, he'll be on the throne, I think, for about 23 years. So that's plenty of time to put your fingers in pies. You're going to see a lot of trouble if he does that in the United Kingdom. And a lot of people will be emboldened by the death of the Queen, especially the separatists who desire fundamentally to break away from the United Kingdom, forge their own nations. If Wales does it, the United Kingdom will still exist because it's a union of Scotland and England. But if Scotland does it, it does effectively destroy the United Kingdom.
Well, I mean, going forward from Queen Elizabeth had such a way and respect that it stopped a lot of that kind of stuff from happening. The last time, the Scottish referendum, I firmly believe that it was Queen Elizabeth's speeches that led to that vote not going the way that the separatists wanted. And now without Elizabeth, I don't think Charles could have the same. And welcoming to the panel, Potato River.
Hello!
The Irishman of the group.
Actually related to Michael Collins.
No.
Welcome, Revan.
Hey, Stone Cold. Hello, Ryan.
Hello.
But, it's going to be interesting moving on because she had the respect that I don't think Charles does.
It's gone now. I personally think that in 20 years, we won't have a United Kingdom. We'll probably have a Scotland, we'll probably have a United Ireland, and England will be lucky to keep Wales.
Yeah. But Revan, what are your thoughts, guys? Since you're just fresh to the panel?
Give me 1 second. I was told in the chat that my avatar is broken. Is it?
Oh no, I don't know what it might be. I don't know.
Give me one.
It looks fine on StreamYards.
How do you break an avatar?
It shows up as just a little
white nipple.
Circle.
Oh, let me check the live broadcast then.
They call it the white nipple.
Oh, I took it off for some reason. I'll just I'll probably mute myself while I do this.
Yeah, you got a white nipple, brother. You're white nippling. All you have to do is change your, just switch to a different one, and it should work.
Working?
That's what I do whenever I white nipple.
There we go. Okay, so I'm following it, and I'm kind of proud to say that my country's given the history that we have, is given a lot of respect. The Prime Minister and the President both signed books of condolences of it, and they're expected to pay a visit up to the north of Ireland, which is actually the barony of the heir to the heir, if that makes sense. So they'll be going up there to pay their respects later on this evening. But I've been talking to friends in a few different places that still have royal families. And it's quite interesting to see what's happening. The Spanish royal family, who's the godson of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, he's after retreating for the past few days. He was very close to Philip and Elizabeth, and they say that he's absolutely devastated. But his royal guards all have black armbands on them. Then Queen Margarita of Denmark is after changing her Golden Jubilee celebrations. They're now toned down. She was the third cousin, also quite close. All the royals are quite close, but she was quite close to her cousin Queen Elizabeth. And she's after toning down the celebrations and everything like that. But it's constantly on our news service, and there was a news reporter who got her news stream switched over to a guy standing in another part because she made a little quip about Britain. Yeah, she said nobody with the new king and everything, that nobody does pomp and circumstance like the British. That's how she said, and immediately it switched over when it was meant to be her. It immediately switched over to a guy. You could see him still fixing on his earpiece, and he's there, and he's like, yes, he said, and instead of saying like King Charles, how they were addressing him the rest of the interview by the previous woman, Shannon, is like, yes, His Majesty King Charles III has returned to Buckingham Palace. He's wearing a black suit, and he's expected to address the nation at 6 p.m. This evening, like going full on respect, which is. It's actually quite good to see. A lot of on TikTok. It's half and half with the Irish. It's like there's jokes, and then there's the Irish people who are like, she's still a grandmother. She had nothing to do with anything that happened in Ireland at all. She's still a grandmother. Just think of it like your own granny.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, the monarch hasn't had direct influence over the affairs of the nation, at least since the time of Queen Victoria.
Yeah, and that's when the worst stuff actually happened in Ireland. During the famine, Queen Victoria stopped aid coming in from different parts of the empire. So,
which is insane.
Given the topic of today's stream, I will not give her the title that the Irish have given just out of respect to Canuck. But Canuck, you've heard me saying her title before, and it's it's not a very flattering one.
No, well, see, and for me, I always get like blood red angry because Elizabeth, to me, has earned the respect of everyone within the realms. Because she's just put in the work. It's like when you see a YouTube channel that, you know, has put out videos, you know, stuck to it, stayed out of the drama, done everything right, and they finally get to 1,000. You feel more you know, congrats, yes, Ryan.
Yeah. Congratulations,
Whereas,
Ryan.
when another channel gets to 1 million and they're just, blowing smoke up everybody's rear end, you just kind of go, that's nice. But when you see somebody who's put in that work and done everything the proper way, you just feel more pride in it. And with Elizabeth, she took her role serious as a heart attack, as the old saying goes.
Yeah.
Can I read something out real
Yeah,
quick?
sure.
That one of our friends in the chat wrote this. From the first images I can recall of going to school, you were in our hallways watching over us. You were my queen for all of my life. Your reign was long and your responsibilities longer. Rest in peace, Your Majesty. Your mark in history shall never be forgotten. And that was from Chris Persia.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's true. Her Majesty, we took for granted. And I think in years to come, we'll see just how much we took for granted. How eloquently and how well the Queen did her role. And in future, I don't mean to preach gloom and doom, but I don't think the monarchy will be as healthy as it was Monday ever again.
No, I disagree with that. I would say as soon as William becomes the king, it'll be sparked
Yes, but that's... I don't
think Charles is going to last
in
a long
the modern vernacular.
Yeah.
I don't think the royal family will have the
respect isn't there. The core of the nation is not behind its monarch. A monarch is not supposed to cater to the people. A monarch is supposed to be a leader who exemplifies what it means to be British. And I do not see that ever taking place among the British monarchy, certainly not under the House of Windsor, simply because whether it's Charles, whether it's Harry, and even William has dirt. He has done very controversial things in his past, nowhere near to that of the Queen. In terms of the Queen, who was recently passed, her reputation was stellar, but her close family did, and still do, have a lot of skeletons in their closet. The general respect is not there for the rest of the House of Windsor, and it's going to I think it will embolden separatists to try their damnedest within Charles's reign to gain freedom and independence and reunification for their respective nations.
That's why I brought up... Go ahead, Revan.
Sinn Féin in the north of Ireland is already poised to do something. But the fact is, because everyone's like, we can't afford it. If tomorrow they're like, oh, there's no more monarchy in the north of Ireland, it's Ireland will go bankrupt overnight. That is an extra 4 million people, bang, that we have to pay social welfare for, that we have to now afford the police. The army has to switch over from being part of the Royal Army to part of the Republic Army. Then you have the issue of the extremist monarchists who are there, the Unionists.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is a huge problem. Because when the Good Friday treatment fluctuated, there was a bombing. And that was a fluctuation from Boris Johnson. So if that treaty was gone in the Republic, we don't want it. We can't afford it. It's too dangerous.
You could hypothetically imagine an independent Northern Ireland.
It can't survive. Its whole power centre is one city. The rest of it, Derry, Armagh, they're all more poverty-stricken areas, especially in the Catholic side, you have a large wealth disparity between the Catholics and the Protestants. In fact, if say for talk's sake, Robert came over to my country and say, "Hey, let's go to the north. We're so close." There's parts I could not speak if I entered, or I will have the crap kicked out of me. And there's parts, because Robert is not a Catholic, that if he entered and he spoke, he would get the crap kicked out of him. It's still dicey.
Yeah, it's a major divide in Ireland.
Yeah.
But I'll let Loki make his point in a second. But I think over the next week or so, the outpouring is going to be enormous.
Yes.
And I think what I spoke to, where I just don't see, especially in the modern vernacular, in the modern terminology, I don't think it'll be a long time before we see that same authority that the Queen had,
if ever
again.
Something funny happened about.
Let's let Loki make his point, and then we'll
let the Yankees speak.
Yeah.
We brought up soap operas before. All I was going to say is that with the loss of the Queen, I agree with Ryan on this. I don't see anyone, not Harry, not William, not Charles. I don't see anyone that the people are going to look at and go, this person cares more about all of us than they do about themselves. That woman had that respect because she cared so much for the people. Everything was about the people. It is about the people, whether we have to make hard decisions to look out for everyone, whether we have to make hard decisions to look out for us. She might have lived in a wonderful castle. She might have lived in a wonderful place. She might have been able to rent whatever. She might have been able to do all these things, but her job came first. Everything came first with her job, and her job was to make sure the people were safe and the people got what they needed. Her job was for the people. And I don't think the people are going to look at anybody, whether they're Charles, whether they're William, whether they're Harry, whether Meghan Markle's involved, whoever the fuck's involved. They're going to be able to look at them and go, this person cares more about me than they care about themselves.
It's
just not going to happen.
In my view, gentlemen, if suddenly a people power group came out of nowhere and promised certain things and delivered on them, whether it's in Wales, Scotland, England, wherever in the United Kingdom, they would have more support among the people than the likes of Charles, especially more than the likes of Harry. This is a dangerous time for the United Kingdom. The next decade, or maybe 2 decades, could determine the course of the United Kingdom's existence. Maybe by the time I'm Loki's age, which is about 15, 17 years, actually, you were born in 79, I was born in 99, so 20 years. In the next 20 years, you could see an independent Wales, an independent Scotland, maybe even bits of England becoming independent. That's how much danger I think the United Kingdom is in.
I've seen something weird, like strange. So there's the separation movement in Scotland. They want to install a steward on the throne.
That's mad.
And they even have a guy. One of the dukes is a descendant of the stewards, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's going to be the king," and I'm like, "Oh yeah."
Jesus.
But the other thing too, I think we need to recognize, and as Loki said, Elizabeth, everything was her job. And I heard a story that I had forgotten about. The Queen was great at gestures when it was needed. And for those who don't know, the Royal Guard, the changing of the guard, is something that there's a certain way it's done, and if it isn't done properly, heads will roll. right after 9/11, there was a bunch of Americans unfortunately stranded in the UK. And the Queen, noticing that there was a lot of Americans there at Buckingham Palace after 9/11, did something that had never been done before, which was during the changing of the guard, the American national anthem was played instead of God Save the Queen. It was the American national anthem in respect to the United States. And that's just because she was. Most monarchs would be like, no, that's my royal anthem. No. But she's like, no, this is what needs to happen. Do it. And that was it. It was final. Elizabeth was a special woman.
Yes.
And I don't think, like, a lot of people that judge her don't have half of her work ethic. I don't think they would collapse. Of what the hell? Because again, I say 96, 2 days before she died. And it's like, really? 2 days before she dies, she's doing her duty.
Actually, it came out today that up until she basically started fading, that she had a Zoom meeting in her deathbed.
Christ. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And also, which is, I don't know if it's a good sign for Charles, as he entered Buckingham Palace today, just before his speech, the entire crowd outside started chanting "God Save the King."
Yeah.
People are desperate to have that sense of reputation that the Queen had to be placed upon Charles, because imagine it, ladies and gentlemen, most of the older generations have known nothing but monarchy, and if the separatists get their way, the United Kingdom will cease to exist, and if the Republicans, the English Republicans, get their way, England would not have a monarchy. So these older people especially are terrified of that. So they want to bolster Charles's reputation. That's going to be easier said than done. Although
I don't think we'll have a full gravitas of the missing spot for at least about a month to a month and a half, because going forward, you're going to have your camera went out. There we go.
No, I'm just messing with the light.
Over the next month, we'll have two, like, the funeral for Elizabeth. Anybody who lives in London, sorry about the traffic jam. But you ain't getting anywhere near.
It's gonna make Churchill's funeral look like a picnic.
Yes,
guys, are you realizing the security threat that's about to happen?
Oh yeah,
yeah. The potential for an attack is immense.
You're having every single monarch in Europe, Prince, Grand Duke, President, are all going to be there at one time.
Yeah, security is going to be insane.
Even the Middle Eastern,
and then right after that, you'll have the coronation of Charles.
Yep.
Quicker the better.
But going forward, and I really want to focus on Elizabeth, but going forward, I'm really interested to see what happens, because there was a lot of talk about how the monarchy would change after Elizabeth. post Elizabeth. For instance, one thing I'm really interested to see is if he is crowned the head of the Church of England, because there was talks while Elizabeth was alive, and Elizabeth hinted at it, that she would be the last monarch to reign over the Church of England, that it would be passed to the
Bishop of Canterbury.
That it would be him that would be the head of the church going forward. So it'll be very interesting to see what changes there is.
Well, I already know some changes that have been reported on our news, if you're interested. Their support for the royal family, like financially, power-wise, has been scaled back. From, like, with Charles, it has been scaled back. From Prince Andrew, he is not going to be supported, right? Neither are his kids or any of the cousins. It's only going to be the direct heirs. In essence, Queen Elizabeth's order has created two houses. The House of Windsor and, what was his name? The House of Mountjoy Windsor. Windsor Mountbatten. It's the other house. So now, in essence, there are two royal houses at the same time in Britain. Because all of Queen Elizabeth's children, except for Charles, their full name is not Windsor, right? It is, just say, Prince Andrew of the House of Windsor Mountbatten. That is their name. But Charles only got Windsor, and only Charles's descendants have Windsor. So now there's two houses.
Yeah, but the other thing too that'll be very interesting is who gets the Prince of Wales. Well, that's another thing that a lot of people don't understand. Right now, Wales doesn't have a prince.
And you have to go through a very complex process within the west of Wales, Carmarthenshire. In the last time it was done was with Prince Charles, and the separatists made it quite clear at the time, if you try to do this, we will try and kill you. We will try to assassinate you. And that is exactly what they tried to do.
I wonder if, now this is kind of going off the topic of the day, but I wonder if it would be smart on Charles's behalf to appoint William.
Well, you could. However, it's not as simple as make it is done.
I mean, typically, as a historical point, the heir to the throne is typically the Prince of Wales. So that would be William.
Guys, it's official. Prince William is going to be the Prince of Wales.
Yeah, it would make sense because William is the heir to the throne.
I had a weird idea of what they could do, just to show support. So we have the Prince of Wales, right? The heir. What if the heir's child gets the Prince of Scotland?
Well, that is an interesting idea theoretically. However, because the United Kingdom is a union of England and Scotland, of which Wales rather is a part of England, the reigning monarch is king of both England and Scotland. They are the main constituent nations.
Yes, but...
Well, there you go. So it's official now. Prince William is the Prince of Wales. But it's interesting because that's one thing that a lot of people aren't taking into consideration. All of the changes that will now take place with Charles being king. All of the money changes. All of the Royal Navy. All the ships are now His Majesty's, not Her Majesty.
Yeah, but they're still HMS.
Yeah, it's still HMS, but it's the terminology will now change.
Hopefully, we don't get a they/them monarch.
Yeah,
I've literally heard someone saying that when they were talking about. There's a weird thing people were talking about, like Prince William's son, right? And they said, oh, he's so young and everything like that. They said, it might be their majesty. And a few years ago,
Oh,
Channel 4, our wokest TV channel,
yeah.
it's even woker than BBC, right? Do you
Yeah.
remember this, Ryan?
Yeah. Oh, God, that organization is awful.
What, do you remember the Jon Snow, I think his name is?
Mhm.
He done a thing where he said, I can't wait to see this. He said, this is just after the legalization of gay marriage. He said, and now introducing his Royal Highness Prince Albert and his husband,
Yeah.
King Consort.
The people would not stand for such a thing, especially
No.
the older people.
The older generation, yeah. But
The United Kingdom would become the Great British Republic faster than the speed of sound.
yes. But I think, over the next little while, I think, we should take a moment out of our days to remember a woman who dedicated her life to the realms and never stopped working.
I'm
The woman
keeping
never
an eye
stopped
on.
working.
Yeah.
And I think I would like to thank Ryan, Loki, Revan for joining
Thank
me.
you.
And I will end the stream with saying simply thus: rest in peace, our queen, and long live the king.
Mhm.